Nashville Predators forward Austin Watson's suspension, which he was given for domestic abuse, has been reduced by an independent arbitrator. We'll go through those details and I'll give you my thoughts coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, Austin Watson of the Nashville Predators has had his suspension, which was originally 27 games, handed down by the NHL's Commissioner Gary Bettman for the domestic abuse incident from this past summer. It's been reduced by an independent arbitrator down to 18 games. Once the suspension was handed down by NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, Austin Watson did have an option through the NHLPA to appeal the decision, which would have been sent to a third-party arbitrator, which is what was completed here. That arbitrator has now determined that the suspension was too long, and they've reduced it down to 18 games. I am very upset by this. I don't agree with it at all. I know when we first did the video discussing the Austin Watson situation, I was totally okay with 27 games. In fact, I was all for it if it would have been longer. And I know many of you who watched that video and left comments indicating they were totally okay with that as well, and also agreed that longer would have been okay, if not better as well. So the fact that this has been reduced is, an absolutely disgrace in my opinion. I don't agree with this at all. I do understand that the NHLPA is there to defend its players and fight for them as a union. I totally get that. The whole purpose of the PA is great and serves a lot of purpose. Can there not be some cases though where they say to the player, like, this, you're clearly in the wrong and what you were given is justified, and leave it at that? Or the other cases, where are they finding these arbitrators? Like, why are they taking domestic abuse so lightly? This incident involving Austin Watson, in case you don't recall, happened back in June. He ended up going to court in July, where he pled no contest, which is basically the same, that he's not disputing it. He's basically saying he's guilty. For all intents and purposes, that's essentially kind of what it means here. After that time, the NHL took its good old time reviewing the case, reviewing all the details, forming its decision. It was pretty much clear that he would be suspended, but it wasn't really clear how long it would be until Gary Bettman and the NHL announced the 27 games here a few weeks back before the start of the NHL season. The original suspension would have put Watson out of the lineup with the Predators until December the 3rd. With the reduction by the arbitrator, he will now be able to get back into the Nashville lineup as early as November the 18th. Shortly after this was announced, the Nashville Predators put out a statement, of course remaining very neutral as I fully expected, basically saying that at this point in time their only concern is to look after the well-being of Austin Watson and his family, and that they're aware of the arbitrator's decision. So I don't expect any further comment from the Predators organization. It's not quite clear if he'll get into the lineup immediately right now on that day when the suspension's lifted or not. Probably a lot of other factors will go into that. He has been able to practice with the Predators. He has been able to use all of their facilities and whatnot, so he should be in game shape, pretty well ready to go once the suspension time has been served. If you look at the other situation the NHL has dealt with here in regards to domestic abuse, I mean, Slava Voynov is really the only other situation, but there's real no precedence here because that situation wasn't really completely handled with. I mean, they suspended Voynov indefinitely, but then he took off to Russia, so this has not really fully been dealt with. We've seen a lot of speculation over the past year that Voynov really wants to return to the NHL. I do believe he had a meeting, I'm not sure if it was with Gary Bettman or with some league officials or executives over the summer. The way I understood it is that Voynov would have to apply to be reinstated by the NHL, and at that point, before he'd be allowed to play though, he would have to be dealt with that situation. The NHL likely would begin his reinstatement off with a suspension. Now, I've heard many hockey insiders and experts like Bob McKenzie, Elliot Friedman, Darren Dreger, Pierre LeBrun, etc., all kind of give their thoughts, and their understanding of the situation was they were led to believe that if Voynov was ever reinstated, that he likely would be starting off probably somewhere around 60, 70, maybe even a whole season of games. If you look at the court details and the police reports, etc., and what we have available to us, the Voynov situation does appear to be, a fair bit worse than the Watson situation. And so they are in some senses fairly different, but at the same time, they kind of fall into the same bucket here of domestic abuse, and it's something that's happened way too often with professional athletes here in recent years, and it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with severely. There's really no good excuse that can be had for having such actions against your partner. Therefore, since this arbitrator didn't really have any kind of cases to look at to set precedents and how to handle this, they're kind of going on a whim here, and I guess they felt 27 games was too much. We may not find out all the full details as to why and how they came to that decision, why the amount was reduced. It really doesn't make sense to me, and I just don't feel like this is being dealt with seriously enough. Of course, I want to hear from you down in the comment section. What are your thoughts on this situation? His suspension's been reduced from 27 games to 18. Was that fair? Is it justified? Or did they make a big mistake here, and now they're setting precedents on these types of cases moving forward here should something like this ever happen again? As we know, the NHL doesn't really have a clear-cut policy on this type of situation, and it doesn't appear like there's one on the horizon. It seems like they would prefer to deal with this on a case-by-case basis should these occur in the future, which I'm not really quite sure is the best way to go about it here. Hopefully at some point in the near future, the league will have enough pressure on it to develop a clear-cut process and procedure here on how to handle these situations. So again, if you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.